John, thank you for that wonderful prayer, that heartfelt petition to our Father. And on our way in, I met Emily on her way out, and I had just talked to Skip. I said, we got stuck in the traffic, and he explained the situation. And as Emily was walking out, we got to discuss, and she talked with Rick, and Marilyn she has some chest pain, and they believe it's because of a rib that is either bruised or broken from the airbag. I said the airbag has done its job, and so we're thankful for technology. We're thankful for the ambulance and that they're at Grandview, and we prayed right there in the parking lot. And I'm just so thankful we were able to lift them up to God in prayer then and now. I think it might be fitting. I had a quote that I wanted to read, and I believe it fits this for the devotional, obviously not based on this current event. But it says, leave everything in God's hands, and eventually you'll see God's hand in everything. Right now it's in eventually, obviously with a situation. But we've got to leave everything in God's hands because it's out of ours. Our hands can be clasped in prayer, and that's the most important thing for us in our focus. And I was using this quote with an idea of something else that was in my hand. Yesterday I spoke at Jefferson Christian Academy, and some of you may know what this is. From this distance you may not, but it's a pendulum from the bottom of from a small analog clock, a little 8-day clock. And I talked about tick-tock in a different way. And the idea, though, of the pendulum swinging is time is constantly moving. Time is constantly slipping out of our hands. And the same day, I was listening to my favorite artist. There's an obscure artist named Lydia Cole. She's a singer, but she's a New Zealander, and she has a unique way of keeping her New Zealand accent. And I've just loved listening to her because it reminds me of my family 10,000 miles away. And what's interesting is she's from a small little town called Tauranga, New Zealand. You probably have not heard of it, but my grandfather and grandmother grew up there. My mother grew up there, and that's where he had his orchard. And a tiny town, just about an hour south of Auckland. And she's from there. And so she has a song called All Our Yesterdays, is what she calls it. All Our Yesterdays. And I thought, all our yesterdays, that's great. And so what's interesting is her music video is just family video, and she and I are the same age, in fact, and so her family video's just as grainy as my family videos. And what's interesting is it's all in the Mount Maunganui is behind her. It's all in I think I even went to the same park that she went to, probably went on the same playground that she was on, and I started seeing all of her yesterdays. Well, those were my yesterdays, and her grandfather looked like my grandfather, and I thought, wow, this is incredible. I thought, wow, time is amazing. But at the end of the song, she says, all our yesterdays are gone. And I thought, they're gone. And I got to thinking, I thought, this poor young lady, she's singing a song that is just reminiscent of the past, but it's gone in her mind because she's not a Christian and she doesn't have the hope of tomorrow. She doesn't have a hope of eternity. And so all she sees is that the time she has just been used up, and she struggled during the pandemic. She actually didn't produce anything for a year or for 2 years. And she said she's terrified, and she is focused on yesterday. Her concept of time is gone. And it was sad. But I don't think about our yesterday as being gone. It's in our memory, but it's also in God's hand. We leave everything in God's hands, and eventually you'll see God's hand in everything. Maybe think about what we have in our hand is this pendulum, this idea of tick-tock, this idea of time. Colossians chapter 4 and verse 2, it says, continue steadfastly in prayer, being watchful in it with thanksgiving. I definitely saw the pun in watchful. But when I thought about this, is we're steadfastly in prayer. We never stop praying. We've prayed quite a bit this evening already. And it's something that we do so steadfastly, but we do it with thanksgiving. We have our petitions, and we've just offered many. We need to remember that when God is in control, we have thanksgiving that we're offering to Him, and we're getting ready as a nation. As a nation, we've almost skipped Thanksgiving and gone to Christmas. But we need to remember thanksgiving in our prayer, in the time that we have. In verse 5, it says, walk in wisdom toward outsiders, making the best use of the time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. Later on, Paul speaks to the Ephesians in Ephesians 5:15. He says, look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time. It's the same phrase. But here he says, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. What is the will of the Lord? Well, we're simply saying, when we say what the will of the Lord is, we're saying leave everything in God's hands, and eventually you'll see God's hand in everything. But exhort one another every day. We can encourage each other every day. If we focus on yesterday, we're going to find discouragement when we have the yesterday's a gone mentality. But we exhort, we encourage one another every day, as long as it's called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. The deceitfulness of sin is that yesterday was what was best. And that is a lie. We appreciate it, we love it, we cherish it. But today is what God has given us. Today, while it is called today, is where we're going to be encouraged, not hardened. Verse 14, for we have come to share in Christ, if indeed we hold our original confidence firm to the end. So that's where we focus on the past. We hold to the original confidence, but we do it firm today and to the end. Verse 15, as it is said, today, if you hear His voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion. There's a rebellion in this world that would simply harden its heart and focus on things that would be fleeting, things that break, things that pass, time that is constantly slipping from our fingers. But we leave everything in God's hand, and eventually you'll see God's hand in everything. We see God's hand in this very moment. At this very time, we have an invitation, a song of encouragement we're about to say, and we've just discussed this idea of an encouragement and exhorting one another every day, as long as it's called today. Right now, it's still today. Right now is a moment that we can be encouraged, a moment that we need to make sure that our life is right with God, that we're prepared, because in any moment we don't know what is coming down the pike. God does, and it's in His hands. Are you in His hands? Tonight, if you need encouragement, please respond while together we stand and while we sing.